The feeling of absolute safety when you're home alone is perhaps just an illusion. The four walls you trust as your fortress sometimes can't keep the darkness out. Sometimes the darkness finds a way in. These are not fictional stories told around a campfire. These are real experiences from real people inside their own homes. You are about to hear 5 true, disturbing horror stories about being home alone. 5 stories that will make you double-check your locks tonight. I used to live in a small town in North Texas, near the Oklahoma border. This town had a lot of old, run-down areas. When I was 20, I lived in one of those neighborhoods, in a dilapidated apartment complex with my girlfriend. It wasn't nice, but it was all we could afford. The area was notorious for crime. People talked about theft and break-ins all the time. Police sirens at night were normal. Still, I wasn't too worried. I had lived in Oak Cliff, a part of Dallas with an even worse reputation. One night, I was off work, reading a book called Shogun in the living room. I'd been reading for about 2 or 3 hours, when I realized I needed to use the restroom. I put the book down and stood up, heading toward the back of the apartment. As I reached the hallway entrance, I saw them. Muddy footprints on the floor. The footprints were heading towards the living room, right where I had been lying on the floor, reading. Immediately, I went on high alert, pressing myself against the wall, worried that maybe someone was still in the apartment. My heart hammered. I carefully followed the muddy tracks down the hall to my bedroom. The room was small. Just a bed, a dresser, and a window on the back wall. When I entered, I saw it clearly. The track started from the window, went past my bed, and then returned to that same window. The window was slightly open. The latch looked loose, as if it had been forced. My bed sheets had faint mud stains, where the person must have stepped over them. The sight made me shudder. I stood there, frozen, trying to figure out if they were still nearby. I spent a long time searching the apartment, but no matter where I looked, I couldn't find anyone. What scared me the most was that the only entrance or exit to the apartment was the front door. The door in the living room, where I was lying. My back had been to the hallway. I wouldn't have seen anything coming. Now, the strangest part, and I know this sounds hard to believe, was the blanket I used to cover the window. It was a large blanket, folded and pinned to cover the window completely. But when I looked at it, the blanket was back in place. It looked untouched. But someone had to have opened that window to get in. I knew it. So, they must have climbed through, carefully moved the blanket aside, and stepped into the room. Then, they walked through the apartment, down the hall, straight to the living room. The thought that they might have stood there, watching me before leaving, chills me to the bone. After that night, I couldn't sleep well for weeks. My girlfriend was worried at first. But since she wasn't there, she didn't understand why I was so terrified. We eventually moved, but it took me a few years to get over it. There are still moments I wonder, why didn't the person come closer? And I still can't figure out how they got in the first place. This happened about 6 months ago. I was in my room getting ready for bed. It was probably 10:30 p.m. My blinds were closed. While I was putting things away, I suddenly heard 3 loud knocks on my window. The sound was sharp and clear, as if someone was standing right outside. My heart started racing. I froze for a moment, too scared to move. A few seconds later, survival instincts kicked in. I bolted from my room and ran straight to my dad. I live with my parents and 2 brothers. My bedroom faces the backyard, not the main street. For someone to knock on my window, they'd have to be in the backyard. My dad checked. He opened the blinds. No one was there. He even went outside. The yard was empty. I tried to forget it, and went to bed. But the next night, at almost the exact same time, I heard the 3 knocks on my window again. The same sound. Clear and deliberate. My stomach dropped. I ran straight to my dad. He checked again. This time with a flashlight. Just like before, no one was there. This time, I couldn't shake the feeling something was wrong. I was too scared. I grabbed a blanket and pillow, and slept on the floor in my parents' room. Nothing happened for the next few nights. Then, about a week later, I was home alone, around 9 p.m. I was on FaceTime with a friend, when I heard the 3 knocks again. I panicked, ran to my parents' room, and called them. They told me to ask our neighbor to check. My neighbor looked, but saw nothing. The next night, around 1 a.m., I was woken up by the knocking. This time it wasn't just 3. It was more, a steady, intentional rhythm. The noise pulled me from a deep sleep. For a moment, I thought about pulling the blinds back. But fear held me in place. I went to wake up my parents, but by this point, they were tired of it and said it was probably nothing. The knocking continued to happen. Not every night, but enough that I couldn't relax. Finally, my parents decided to move me to a different bedroom. At first, it worked. For about 3 nights, everything was quiet. But then, I heard it again. The same knock. 3 loud taps, just like before. This time, I was fed up. And I decided to look out the window. And I saw someone. A person, crouched down outside. I think it was a man. They were wearing a gray hoodie and dark jeans. I slowly closed the blinds, and ran to tell my parents. This time, they decided to call the police. The police came. They checked the property, but found no one. They suggested we install cameras. The next day, we put up a security camera pointed right at my window. We moved into this house about 7 years ago. From the beginning, certain things made me feel like we weren't alone. One of the first moments happened in the basement. Our house is a split level, so the basement is only partially underground. During the day, sunlight comes in, so I don't usually turn on the lights. I was looking for a tackle box. I found the hooks I needed and set them on a table. As I was putting the box away, I must have bumped the container of hooks. And it fell, scattering them everywhere. I bent down to pick them up. And right at that moment, the basement light switched on. At first, I thought my husband was home from work. I even said, "Thanks." But there was no reply. I called his name. Still no answer. I went to check. He wasn't home. I was alone with my dog. The switch had been flipped. Something had to have moved it. Another time, I was cleaning upstairs. We have an Electrolux vacuum. It has a large button you have to press to turn it on. And another switch on the wand. I had just finished vacuuming the stairs and turned it off, but I left it plugged in the living room. I went down the hall to change the laundry, and I suddenly heard the vacuum turn on. My dog was right beside me. We both turned to look at the vacuum at the same time. No one was there, but the vacuum was running. Another time, my husband was home. We had just gotten back from the store. I was going to feed the dog, while he took some groceries to the basement. The dog food was in a cabinet downstairs. As I went downstairs, I saw out of the corner of my eye, what I thought was my husband coming down the stairs. He came down, stood behind me for a moment, then walked toward the area where we keep canned goods. I grabbed the dog food and asked him, "Is there anything else to bring down?" But there was no answer. I asked again. Still nothing. I walked around the corner where he had gone. No one was there. I was alone in the basement. I took the dog food upstairs, and found my husband on the other side of the house. I asked if he'd been in the basement. He said he hadn't even been downstairs yet. The strange part is, my husband doesn't believe in ghosts. He always brushed it off. Until this one time. He was home alone with the dog. I was on the phone with him. Having just left work, calling to see if he needed anything. He was talking. Then suddenly went silent. Then he said, "Hold on, someone's here." I thought it was odd. Because I hadn't heard the dog bark. He got back on the phone and said, "I'll call you back, I just saw someone at the door." When he called back, he told me he had gone outside, checked the whole house, the outbuildings, the garage. But no one was there. He swore he saw someone in a flannel shirt walk by the door. We live miles from anyone. There's nowhere a person could have hidden that fast. Now, he believes everything I've said. When I was about 16, my dad, my brothers, and I lived in an old, rundown house far out of town. The landlord didn't seem strange to me, but that's probably because I usually stayed inside when he came by to talk to my dad. He'd never try anything with my dad around. But one day, I was home alone. My dad and brothers were gone somewhere. It was just me and my dog, who was outside in the fenced yard. I was in my room, probably playing The Sims 2. My room had a window facing the long driveway leading to the house. We rarely had visitors. I saw a car coming up the driveway, and it wasn't my dad's truck. Panic set in immediately. I ran through the house, closing all the blinds, turning off the lights, and making sure the doors were locked. When I looked again, I saw it was our landlord. This wasn't the first time he'd shown up unannounced. It had happened twice before, and both times I had been home alone. Those first 2 times, he didn't stay long. But this time, it felt different. I grabbed a baseball bat, and hid under the table in the kitchen area. I heard his truck stop outside. My dog was barking hysterically. I could hear his footsteps approaching the house. Then, he tried the front door. I was trembling. I texted my dad, telling him what was happening. The landlord walked around the outside of the house, stopping at every single window, and trying to peer inside. Our house had 3 different doors. I heard him try to open all of them, one by one. At first, I thought maybe he didn't know I was home. But then, he started talking. Calling my name. Loud and clear. He knew I was there. I slowly moved through the house, trying to follow his voice. And that's when he said something I will never forget. He said, "Eleanor, I know you're in there. Why don't you come out? I brought something special for you. You don't want to keep me waiting, do you?" His tone was soft, almost playful. But it carried an insidious edge, that made every word feel like a trap. I knew if I'd trusted him and gone outside, things would have gone very differently for me. He stayed outside for at least 30 minutes. Finally, he left. When my dad got home, I told him everything. I could see how angry he was. A few weeks later, we moved out of that house. When I was about 13 or 14, my friends and I decided to hang out at a park near the woods. We were walking down a quiet trail, when we suddenly heard a strange noise behind us. We turned around. There was an older man, maybe in his 60s, wearing dirty clothes. His dog was standing next to him. We got really scared when we saw him staring right at us, and walking slowly, towards us. Without thinking, we ran up some stairs to a bridge, screaming in fear. Once we were safely on the bridge, we glanced back at him. We thought maybe we'd overreacted, that he'd just keep walking or shake his head at us. But then we saw him. His head was tilted up, eyes locked onto us. And he was limping, quickly, towards the stairs we had just run up. Panic set in. We ran as fast as we could down the trail, splitting up at a fork. We ran as quietly as possible, and when we finally met at our rendezvous point, we were panting and shaking. We talked about whether it was safe to go back. After a moment, we decided we'd sneak along the clearer path, where we had a better view. We felt safe, until we got to the bridge. There, the man and his dog were slowly walking down the stairs. But to our horror, we screamed. He turned around, saw us, and started walking back up the stairs, towards us. Without thinking, we turned and ran again. We sprinted along the path, taking random turns until we were far enough away. From there, we hurried back to the playground, where there were families. We didn't go back to those woods for a long time. Even now, over 10 years later, we still wonder, why was that man so determined to follow us? And what did he want? Five stories. 5 reminders that even the safest sanctuary can be breached. Sometimes, the threat doesn't try to break down the door. It knocks, it wanders your hallways, or it just stands outside the window, waiting. Have you ever experienced something similar while home alone? Share your story in the comments below. Lock your doors and sleep well.